I'm Alexandra. I'm a long-term volunteer with Care4Calais. I've been over here since May, so 4 months now. And I work alongside Claire in the overall running of Care4Calais and all the different kind of moving parts that we have going on. And I kind of accidentally got involved in Care4Calais. I came for a few days and then ended up being here 4.5 months later, or 4 months later, sorry. So it's one of these places where you get strangely sucked in because of a sense of community. Community amongst the volunteers, and especially the community in camp. Like the relationships you build and friendships with the guys in camp is really unique. I think because it's such an intense environment where it is very harsh, to live in such an environment, emotionally, mentally, physically, that people build bonds a lot quicker than they would necessarily do in day-to-day life in London. And everyone has this amazing sense of compassion for each other. We work alongside a team of refugee volunteers. So we have about 8 long-term volunteers who are here for a good couple of months. And they form part of our core team, and the other part of our core team is about 8 to 10 refugee volunteers. And they give up their day every single day, just like we do, to come and help and provide aid work in the camp. So they assist in distributions, they assist in ticketing. They are just as integral to our organisation, probably even more so than we are. So Care4Calais is a humanitarian aid organisation. We were founded in November 2015 by Claire, Sue and John. Claire is the kind of lead in Calais. She does a phenomenal job. She's an amazing woman, very inspirational. She set it up because she was over here, she came over in September before really any of the main organisations. When I say main organisations, I mean the ones operating on the ground now, before any of them really moved in. And she started off actually providing food. Care4Calais came out of providing food because she is an accountant by trade and quickly realised that the most cost-effective way of providing nutritious hot meals for the guys in camp, especially during the winter, was to create community kitchens. So she created Ashram Kitchen, which is now runs itself and separate entity to Care4Calais. And she started off doing that, and then we built into van distributions of clothing and toiletries. And over the last, how many months have we been around now? 11 months? No, 12 months. No, my maths is terrible. November to September.
Yeah.
That is going to be 9 to 10 months. We have rapidly expanded, and what we offer is very much based on changing needs of the camp. So to begin with, the camp was all about getting the guys their basic provisions. So they needed sleeping equipment, they needed clothes, they needed toiletries, they needed food. As the camp has kind of built out and grown and developed, and the state is kind of stabilised, but unfortunately the stability of it is pretty dire conditions. The needs of the camp have started changing. So we also now offer, we do direct aid, doing the providing the core stuff that guys need. We also run social welfare programs, which is mobile art and English workshops where we go out into the community and do art classes, but also English language classes and French classes. And they are to help complement the schools which exist in camp. We also do building work as well. We do shelters. We're building a school at the moment, rebuilding one which accidentally burnt down from a candle the other week. We recently built a social work centre.
Did it burn down because there's a lack of sort of electricity and warmth in the camp, or
yes.
Is that why they're using candles?
Yeah, so in the camp there's no electricity, there's no sewerage system. The only electricity which is there is generators, but there's not that many of them. There's quite few and far between. You have a handful of water stations where people wash their clothes, get drinking water and wash up and wash themselves. You have 142 portaloos for a community of 9,000 plus people. And you also have about 30 ticketed showers. So if a guy wants to go and use a shower, they need to get up really early in the morning, queue up, get a ticket, and then queue back up again to have a 6-minute shower.
And is that with warm water?
I'm not sure. Okay. I wouldn't be able to say. I've not been in there myself. It's a closed-off area run by a French organisation. Okay.
And so who's sort of responsible for the camp?
No one's really responsible for the camp. The camp, although we call it a refugee camp, it's an illegal settlement. So it exists here in this limbo. It falls between the political cracks. The French government has not taken responsibility for it. They've not recognised that it's a humanitarian crisis and named it as an official settlement. And because of that, we don't have the big players. We don't have the UN here. We don't have Save the Children. We don't have the names you normally hear on the news and associate with aid work. And because we don't have them, it now falls on the hands of independent grassroots organizations like Care4Calais and the number of other smaller guys working on the ground here to be able to provide that aid. And that's a very, very unique situation. There's nowhere else in the world that I'm aware of that operates in the same capacity, run by independent aid workers. So it's quite unique in that sense. So we, as a group of organisations, we work collaboratively together. We have a weekly meeting. We have actually have multiple weekly meetings where the aid organisations come together. We also meet with the community representatives and constantly maintain a dialogue of what's going on within the camp, how the work we're doing is needs to change, needs to adapt. So as a dialogue, so we've basically created our own kind of structure, an operational structure.
Around the camp, I mean, you probably do that every day or more or less every day. What's sort of the most difficult to sort of look at when you go through the camp?
It's a pretty tough question. I think one of the things that I personally find the hardest is I think it's the stark contrast of the level of positivity and resilience and compassion shown by people who have so little. You see people living in absolute squalor. You have festival tents. Most people now are back in tents because the population has grown so rapidly over the last couple of months. We're now up to over 9,000 people. We cannot build shelters at the moment within camp. There's restrictions on that because the government doesn't want it to be a permanent settlement, and they see wooden 2 metre by 2 metre constructions as more permanent. So most guys are living in tents, and you see guys there who in a 4-man tent there's 8 guys living in there. They have maybe a couple of blankets between them, and they've only got the clothes on their back. They have walked across continents in flip-flops or with broken shoes, and they generally have nothing than what they're standing in. And I think what I find the hardest day in and day out is every day, like, tens of guys will come to me and say, like, please can I have a jumper, please can I have shoes. Shoes is one of the biggest things everyone asks for, and gas. And they're like, I have no shoes, look at my shoes. And I stand there and I say, like, I would love to give you a pair of shoes, and we are currently trying to get as many shoes as possible so we can distribute them out, but right now I don't have any. And not being able to provide just the bare basics to everyone in camp. Like, I wish that if someone said I'd like a pair of shoes, I could just hand them a pair of trainers which are like durable and sturdy, and they're not going to fall apart after 5 minutes of wearing them. But to be able to say, like, I don't actually have that to be able to provide for you, I think is one of the biggest things, because for them, we are their main source of anything they can have. And all those people have absolutely nothing, they will share everything they have. So the guys may have, like, if a guy has 2 pairs of joggers, he will share those pairs of joggers with his friends. Like, you walk into a tent, and when we do ticketed distribution, you'll sit down in a tent of like 10 people, and we have 2 sheets. We have one item, like high value items, so they're items which are over like €5. So they're like a hoodie, a joggers, washing kits, so a bucket and washing powder or pots and pans. And then we have smaller value items, so spray deodorant, t-shirts, boxes, and you can pick 3 of them or 1 big item. And you'll sit down and the guys will talk collectively and say, okay, well, what do we need as a group? Okay, well, we need some more shampoo, so I'll ask for shampoo, you ask for joggers, you ask this, and they pool their resources. And it's this sense of community, which is really incredible, because you think that if people have so little, it could be very easy for someone to say, no, this is mine and I'm not going to share it, but that doesn't come across that's not what comes in their mind. They said, how can I help everyone else?
But there's, many different nationalities there. So you got people from Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, Iran, even Albania.
Yeah.
And you're saying that there's some sort of solidarity that they stick together. Does everyone from different nationalities mix, or is it just?
Yeah. There's a phenomenal sense of solidarity within the camp. With a population that large, there is inevitably tensions. The biggest communities in terms of demographics is the Afghan and Sudanese communities. They're the largest. And then we have Eritreans, have a huge representation. We've got Iraqis, Ethiopians, Somalians, Syrians, but they're quite few on the ground. There's not that many. There's about 70 to 100. And I'm just thinking we've got some Egyptians. We've got a mix, but the biggest communities are the Afghans and Sudanese. One of the things is the media constantly misrepresents them, and inevitably, because they're the largest number of people, it's inevitable that they will probably have some kind of tensions rubbing up alongside each other. And that's not because it's one community versus another. That's just tensions you get in any environment. Like, if you think about it, you walk through day-to-day life, you're not happy 100% of the time. You're inevitably going to have an argument and fall out with people. And what happens is people take those day-to-day, everyday kind of disagreements and stereotype them along kind of racial lines, national lines. And I think that's where problems occur in misrepresentation. And people tend to, in the camp, live within their communities. So you'll have a bunch of Sudanese guys living together and a bunch of Afghans living together. But that doesn't mean they're not tolerant to other people coming in. It just means that, like anyone else, they want to sit down and all speak the same language, and they all like the same food and share that kind of sense of culture. But I wouldn't say it's you're not welcome in here.
What about the media? I mean, I know the camp started off as migrants coming in, and they sort of called it as an inside joke, the jungle, but then the media kept pushing that sort of paradigm as this is the jungle.
Yeah.
So what do you feel about that? I mean, walking around, do you feel like, there's all these people? Because it kind of just makes them look like savages.
It does, and I think you're totally right. The language used in the media at the moment is perpetuating stereotypes and misconceptions. I think calling it the jungle frames it in the wrong way. You immediately think of a bunch of animals, a bunch of savages, and you think of a more dangerous environment. And I think yes, it can be a dangerous environment. It's inevitable.
Have you ever experienced any sort of hostile situation?
I think it's just as much as going out on a Friday night in Edinburgh or Glasgow.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, and there are tensions, and I think you need to respect that there will be tensions. People have nothing, and they're living in squalor on top of each other. The geographic size of the camp is not growing, but the population is growing, so the population density is going up. But I think what we need to all really be careful with is the language we use. As an organisation, we refer to it as a camp because that's a lot more humanising. And a lot of the work we do and the way we distribute aid is about how can we facilitate human interaction and create a level playing field. It's not about this top-down approach or like us versus them. We work in collaboration with the guys in camp. Our ticketing system means you sit down, you have a conversation with somebody, you say, what is it that you need? Here's some options, instead of saying, stand in line, you'll get what you're given. And we're trying an awful lot with any communications we put out is to really push this human side of things and show the people behind the stats. The people talk about the thousands of people who are living in Calais, but they need to think about that in the wider context. There's been 1 million refugees enter Europe in this last year. Germany took over 500,000 refugees. 150,000 went to Sweden, 150,000 went to Hungary. I can't remember the exact set for France. I think it was like 70,000. So if you think about 9,000, that's actually a small percentage. And of those 9,000, 60% of them want to go to the UK. And that's because they generally have a personal reason to go there. It's either they speak English incredibly well. A lot of the guys are very well educated in camp and speak English better than I do. They have family connections there. They've lived there before. Some of them went to university there. They have a connection, and there's a reason they are enduring the conditions they're currently living in to get there. It's not because this is the nice, easy option. If anyone had a choice, they wouldn't want to live in the camp. And if you think about it, if those 6,000 people went over to the UK, or if 20,000 people went over to the UK, given the size of the UK's population, we could live our entire lives, the majority of us, and never come across a refugee. And I think we need to rethink the numbers and put them in the broader context, so then we actually realize what we're talking about when we say we need to readdress the situation.
So what can people do? Like, what can Care4Calais do other than bringing aid? I mean, is there a way of helping these refugees to escape camp life and sort of, I don't know, get the same Western liberties that we may have?
So as an organisation, our main focus is on alleviating supporting the day-to-day living here, and providing that aid work. But we also do some campaigning. So we're supporting campaigns at the moment. We're working on pushing to get the children out of camp following the legislation that was passed in the Dubs Amendment. We're also supporting any conversations which look at providing a legal and safe way for people to go to the UK, because at the moment it's clear that it's not happening.
There has been some talk about
there's been a lot
moving
of
it
talks
to
and
Dover.
conversations, and we're really trying to support them. And
Do you think that'll be a better option to move over to Dover?
I think it could be a better option. I think the main thing we need to think about is we need to come up with a solution where people can get processed from here, because at the moment there's no way of legally entering the UK, and that is one of the root causes of the problems here. You know, demolishing the camp is not going to solve it. You need to actually start opening up ways so people can legally and safely claim asylum.
So your message is sort of away from fear and hostility and more towards compassion and caring for the refugees.
Yeah,
in that
absolutely.
sense.
I think, you know, we all need to show more compassion.
Yeah.
If there's one thing this place has taught me, it's compassion, and that comes from both sides, from the guys we're working with in camp to the volunteers. The more compassion we have, the greater place this world will be.